So you got to follow your passion too. There's a little bit of that in there, but just don't give up hope. This is such a beautiful time to be alive, because it's changing energies. I really believe that we're in a once in a 2,000 year change of energetic frequency. And to be alive during this time, to be able to feel it and witness the changes of these dark energies and powers trying to push that and try to stop that ascension, it's not going to happen. The light's always going to triumph. So if you're coming in this direction of it, notice the changes around you, absorb them, and think of a Rubik's Cube of ways to protect yourself, but don't get caught in that hopelessness, because, the vibration that you were talking about there, Outcast, was that vibration that you're putting out, that if you're hopeless and your fear and there's nothing left to lose, or there's nothing left in life and there's really nothing left to lose, and like that vibration that you're putting out, that is the lowest human vibration that there is. Like something's feeding off of that. But, the leader actually pushing, they're going, all right, you got 8 billion people that are going to move away from a heavy density, and they're going to start rocketing forward with these new changes coming out of the electromagnetic field of the sun. Like, how are we going to control that? Their brains are going to see different frequencies of light. They're going to process information differently. They're going to see through the BS clearly. Because if they try to put a 1400s system of control and try to bring the Pope back and have the church with their armies, we'd laugh them out of it. But get out of here, So something had to be recreated and created differently for the control. So I think that's the direction we're going.
No, you tapped into something I was considering earlier today. I'm trying to wrap my head around, get back to where I was earlier. But I was thinking the same thing, like with their technology, to roll it out in a kinetic war would be too obvious if they're going to thin the herd. It's got to be done in this mass psychosis type way. So it's got to be rolled out on a mass scale in a fear event, which stops people from thinking critically. So you were asking me earlier what the next event is going to be. I'm with Jesse that I believe that they could roll out, an electronic blackout of some sort, a cyber attack. Thank you. But I also think that they are also teeing up the next super virus for 2025, and that's based on their own dialogue.
Well, let me explain why they might have to be in such a overdrive phase to go through that. So if you look back through where the planets sit in the heavens, they call it planetary geometry, of where actually our planets sit in their orbits in the solar system, when we come into these extremely low magnetic fields on the sun, generally all the planets are going to couple or, be next to each other in just one quadrant of the solar system. And you could, zip through, you could use Solar System Scope, which is a free one. A little better graphics on that. You could use JPL, but it's just dots on a screen that move around. But one thing that you find is Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune get in, and they get into a variant of a square. They might be offset a little bit either way, but this time where we're going to sit in October of 2024 is the same exact geometry of square as 79 AD. It's 1 minute of arc off out of 360 degrees. Now, what has been talked about, this is just me regurgitating ancient history, is that something happens in the inner looping of these four gas giants. The magnetic fields interplay. The Earth's are in the center of this, and then the sun steps down an electromagnetic field output, and nothing goes to zero. It just transfers. So the outer planets will be more luminescent, or they'll start to glow again. The ancient tales tell of Saturn as being a second sun in the sky. Mm-hmm. The Wall Street Journal warned, just don't sit there, do something. Have you checked the value of your home, your 401k? Many Americans are too afraid to look at their 401k and their IRA account statements. Isn't it time you took retirement matters into your hands with a self-directed IRA with physical gold and silver? Not paper, physical gold and silver. Call the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late. Remember, Patriot Gold Group offers the no fee for life IRA, where your 401k or IRA can be in physical gold or silver on qualifying rollovers. That's 888-546-7020. And now on with the video. So if you think about, we're going to move through that field in October 2024, the Earth will be between those two magnetic fields, and we're going to get in some sort of magnetic anomaly that hasn't occurred in several thousand years. And again, how is this going to affect humanity as we pass through this? But who's ever laughed after that is, see, whoever's born during that time, their children are going to be 200 years old. They're going to be 150-year-old children. So think about that. That fits exactly what Ransom said. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, if we come back through this massive, epic, century plus average lifestyle, being born in this really low magnetic field in 2024, in October, that whole year prior, and even into 2025, if you're born in that, if you have children born in that, they are going to live exceptionally long lifetimes. And then you're talking about wiping out the population in 2025, right after all this longest births in 400 or 2,000 years. You got to realize the people that could be born during that low magnetic field could live the longest of any humans in the last 2,000 years.
Wow.
So think about that.
Amazing.
You're talking about these elite families grabbing on to, getting this, kingship and rulership into the next dynasties and next, generations. What if everybody else like me, we all lived and our children were going to be 120, 130 average lifespan, 150, 200 based on this magnetic field? You wouldn't want them interfering with your game. You would definitely want to take them out. There you go. Control, remove the competition again. 2025, you hit it right on the head with that virus thing.
Yeah, and they do keep talking about it, but what you're saying there, wow, that's huge. They can nail that one perfectly, timing wise.
So, David, do you have an opinion? Do they plan on? This is where my head goes, anyways. I'm going to throw this by you. Do they plan on surviving this event by going into the DUMBs, the deep underground military bunkers? Is that kind of their fail-safe to get through?
Yeah, their readouts and castles and things.
Yeah, I'm not really sure, but I've, done enough study with Nikola Tesla to know that these electro-gravitics devices, especially the military has been working on this for a while. Some of these unidentified objects that we see in the sky are actually our own tech. It's just weightless travel. Again, not out into the general public because you wouldn't consume anything. You need no fossil fuels. We need no roads. We wouldn't need anything. It's running on the Earth's magnetic field.
Yeah.
So you would have the possibility of, taking any weight up into space because it's weightless. That's what happens in electrogravitics. You take an object, I don't care if it's 100 tons, 1,000 tons, or 1 pound, and it goes weightless because of the cancellation of of gravity by using magnets in a spinning fashion. Well, now they really wired it out. I've seen a few aerial vehicles that seem to have it looks like a large pizza on the bottom, and it's different layers of copper, and they put current into that, and that's how you bank on it. And the original designs, it didn't have so many of those. It was more 4 plates maybe, but now it's like, hundreds, so they can micromanage how fast, and they can put a plasma edge out on it and it's go at extremely high speeds through things that would be impossible for our metals to withstand the forces. But if you're going to put a plasma field in front of it, it's like just going through nothing. There's literally nothing in front. You're putting a plasma field in front. That's your medium you're traveling through. You're not actually traveling through air. You're traveling through that bow shock created by the plasma coming off of those craft on the forefront, on the frontal edge boundary. Yeah.
That reminds me.
So they could easily go off Earth.
Yeah.
If the technology is as advanced as supposedly it has been since the 1960s, when electrogravitics, Dr. Brown was probably the main number one person in the 1960s. I'll tell you a story. They had started to work with this tech, and before they would tether it onto poles of different varying sizes, because they couldn't really control the craft that well. And these things would spin around on the pole, but the original ones, they didn't have them tethered, and once it shot, it was gone, never recovered again. It just kept going. So they had to tether the things, and this is in the early 1960s. Dr. Brown, and the actual science name of this is electro-gravitics, like gravity and using electricity, electro-gravitics. So you could sit off Earth too during this event, because you wouldn't have to think about lead shielding. You could have, 50 feet thick of lead on your craft because it's weightless.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how much it weighs, it's weightless because of the counteracting gravitational forces through electromagnetism allow you to break that. Like I said, it could be 100 tons, 200 tons, 1,000 tons of metal around you, or your, space station.
Yeah.
If the technology is that advanced, if it's 50 years advanced, they're traveling, way further than we're being allowed to know about.
Right. Now, you talked about having that plasma field out in front of it. Have you ever seen those models or the videos of the craft that just come out of the sky and go straight into the water, or opposite, they come right out of the water and go straight up in the air. That's probably what that plasma field is out in front of it. It doesn't rip that vehicle apart.
That's right. Either way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not so sure about ice or ground like mud in terms of how that can move through the medium right there, but for sure air and water.
Wow. Now you're bringing me up to the Iron Republic and all that stuff and the Antarctic ice wall and all that stuff. Wow.
I'm just kind of in awe of something that's so obvious,
Yeah.
A way that I didn't think about it until David said it. But, if you watch anything on wild animals, let's say, I'm going to use the hippopotamus as an example, and you watch infanticide, which is where, to avoid food competition and or mating competition, the males will kill baby males. And it seems horrific to us, but it's a part of nature. I think bears do it too. A lot of different animals do it. And then you look at how carnal these elites are, how godless and carnal they are. Of course, it makes sense that if they knew there was a natural event coming, that they would try to figure out a way to position themselves to thin the herd and lessen their competition for food and for anything else in the new world and to be in control. So I'm sorry for being redundant. I'm just kind of marveling at the animal side of it. Am I making sense?
You are. And then,
Yeah.
And then just bring it down. And suddenly if we have a catastrophic food collapse here where either supply chains stop working or we actually can't grow it or we can't deliver it, they're in symbiosis. Imagine that competition factor when people get hungry and there's only enough food for 3 people, but there's 4 or 5 people waiting there with their families that need to get fed. At that point, you're going to start to see some of that same carnage come back. Animal instinct or human animal instinct will take over again.
Wow. I just looked up this electro-gravitics and it's talking about the military using it, their propulsion, going back to the late 1800s from Nikola Tesla's work. And, they had a long time to work on this stuff, David, and there's illustrations here showing how, that plasma field you're talking about. And it's just another thing here that has been not talked about. People would rather hear about the football game than this kind of stuff, right? Drives me nuts.
Well, one of the things too was in the beginning when they started to try to encapsulate these either in boxes or actually flew with it in the early designs of the signs, and I would say 1950s, right into the late 50s. Back at that point, a lot of the sightings of what we consider unidentified aerial vehicles had what they were word for word lightning discharge out of the bottom of it. That's free power.
Yeah.
Because if you were to put that into a box or in some sort of encapsulation and set it in the corner of your home, that continuous discharge, you could dial that in to have a continuous flow of electricity coming off of that field. And, that's where it makes me sad, where we had these, technologies back in the 1880s to have free electricity on demand in a home, in a neighborhood. And with the advent of understanding later on in the early 1910s and 15s or so, right when World War I started, they started getting into the electro-gravitics. And from that point, we wired the planet versus going to on-demand production of all needs for humanity on demand. So if you talk about these ancient cultures and say, well, if they were so advanced, why don't we find their cars laying around? Well, if you did the on-demand type of power generation and you're also using the, Paleozoic mineral lines in the earth to deliver power as well, or ride on top of those natural lines, they wouldn't leave much of a fingerprint. So even when I look at humanity the way it is today and the way that we were forced to put copper cabling out everywhere and we were forced to rip up the railroads and put down, roads, and now they're blaming you for everything. And they say we have to transition to economy. I'm like, well, that transition to economy is a false bait and switch. We should be transitioning to what you're referencing there, Jesse, is these, Tesla technologies that could take us completely. We don't need to go mining rare earth minerals.
Right.
We're talking about putting magnets together so they spin off of each other and continue indefinitely off the Earth's magnet. You ever, as a kid, played with magnets? You push them and they push each other away?
Oh, yeah.
That's all you're doing is you're using two different positive, negative, and you're putting them on two plates, and it'll just try to spin away from each other indefinitely.
I see these.
And they're trying to sell you a solar panel or some kind of garbage like this when we could, come on.
Listen, they're gaslighting us on a planetary scale. They're laughing at us. They know all this technology exists. They don't want us to have it. They don't want us to. What are we? We're the useless eaters down here.
Well, then you could really go way off. You could really go way off systems then, because if you had limitless power in your home,
yeah,
you could run 100 grow lights at any time, and you could really, expand out you would literally be off the system except for some of the large things. They couldn't, raise a cow in your house, I don't think. But in terms of food growing and aquaponics and this sort of thing, anything that requires power, you could scale it as large as you want at your own home because everything's free at that point.
Yeah, and that's too much freedom for us. They don't want us to be that free. We have to be. Everything's got to be metered, right? And everything's got to be paid for. That's how they keep us down. It's so simple if you think about this. They set it all up, right? It's like we walked right into a trap, or we were born into the trap. Oh man, it's so frustrating, David, as we get deeper and deeper. But we go ahead.
No, well, even though these grow lights that I use here are only 80 watts, I mean, still it's 80 watts. Right. You let that grow light go for, a month on, that's a power bill.
Yeah,
Imagine you have zero power bills, no electric bills, no fuel bills. You would never have to buy gasoline because Earth's magnetic field goes anywhere on the planet. Think about how different life would be structured if there was no pollution, because we wouldn't have any combustion vehicles on the roads at all. We wouldn't have any airplanes either in the skies because, the same thing. What do you think those things flying around are? They're weightless as well. And you wouldn't need most of the industry that we've encountered over the last 120 years would have never been needed or even built out. We would have never needed these factories.
Right.
And you start to look at how different would the world be with no expenses or very few. There would have been no wars because there's nothing to defend. There would have been no petrodollar. There would have been nothing, none of this. And when you look back at that, you go, oh, that was carefully planned. Get all these wars after wars after wars for more control, and then control the money, control this. I think their ultimate goal is to control the energetic output of humanity and harness that.
Yeah.
For some reason, it's beyond the extraction of wealth. It's something more about the energy resonance and frequency that I think is being harnessed and used, because people always reference as, well, your time is being stolen, that kind of thing.
Yeah, saying the same thing in a slightly different way. You think about it, why would there be all these factories and all this stuff if we didn't need it? Because they needed to enslave us so that we can be better. I like to look at it like this. The Garden of Eden, the word deceive turns out to be in the Collins Concordance as being to lend on interest, become a lender, and usury. So in the Garden of Eden, how the devil controls humanity is through indentured servitude, essentially. So if you keep people on this hamster wheel running and you keep printing money and devaluing it, and so they have to work harder, and then now their wife has to work, and now everybody, now you have to work two jobs and everything, then you're less likely to catch on to who they are and how they're controlling you. So it's a matter of, I don't want to say keeping us busy, but they're keeping us busy. Does that make any sense?
It does, yeah. And to me, it almost makes more sense. Like we've said before, Outcast, they need, we're creating the image of God. This is Satan's world, right? He needs to corrupt us. If he can get us corrupted and we don't, complete that image of God, then he's done his work.
Yeah. Corrupted, enslaved, in low frequency, that is unhealthy. Yeah. The more unhealthy we are, then the less sharp our brains are. The less we can see, the less we can understand or comprehend. I mean, I talk to people on a daily basis, and they're just constantly telling me how, man, my memory is just shot, and I just feel foggy headed. And I'm trying to tell them, I'm advising them to get to a holistic doctor and maybe have a heavy metal cleanse or whatever. And they're like, okay, yeah. And do they follow through? I mean, some might, but I don't think most of them will, because they're too cloudy headed. I mean, they got us right where they got the bulk of us where they want us. It's the people like us that have managed to maintain our health and our faith and our free thinking attitudes that can see so much. It's almost a burden to watch these people just flounder around like mentally ill sheep in a field.
Yeah.
It's a thing.
Yeah. Well, David, any last words before we end off tonight? This is such a great discussion, great topic. You brought a lot of things to us that we've never, look at that electro-gravitics.
Yeah.
Wow. That's,
Wow.
the birthing, what'd you call that?
Magnetic field birthing.
Yeah. The magnetic field birthing. Wow. I just appreciate you coming on here and sharing all this knowledge with us.
Well, one thing I could say is, all this stuff I talk about, I never knew.
Mm-hmm.
I learned it. Like,
Yeah.
how did I get to grow these trays of succulent greens here? And by the way, these black-eyed peas, just for anybody, they're cheaper than sunflower seeds, and they're nearly identical in terms of the stem and the snappiness and the crispiness and the sweetness of these here. Like, I'll just tear one of those off, and they're identical almost in taste and profile. I didn't know how to do that. I learned how to do it by making mistakes, but then other people taught me how to do it more efficiently. So then I became just, can you teach me that? Can you teach me that? You can watch like 50 YouTubes, but you got to go do something. But that's the whole message is, I didn't know how to do any of this either. How do you think I got to here right now is I learned along the way. You're never too late to learn. There's always that people that are going to need your help. Like, I have a 23-acre farm out here. Do you know how many people I would love to have out here helping me? Like, if you have skills or you want to learn skills or you want to help, there's always going to be somebody with land, in availability of food that's going to need help growing that food, because the more hands you can grow more food.
Right.
And that's a skill. And, what I say is you go out and try to develop your skills and learn what you can for the basics. Start with the microgreens. And everything that you possibly want to do, you can learn. And that's the greatest thing is, we always have tomorrow to absorb more information. We also have today and tomorrow to try to practice it and, learn from that and to better the skill of whatever that is. And not everybody likes to garden. Not everybody likes to, do the same things we do. And that's where, communities come in. As you have 200 people in a community, maybe only 20 of them like really growing food. The other ones like repairing things. The other ones like building things. The other ones like cooking things. The other ones like educating. So you got to follow your passion too. There's a little bit of that in there, but just don't give up hope. This is such a beautiful time to be alive, because it's changing energies. I really believe that we're in a once in a 2,000 year change of energetic frequency, and to be alive during this time, to be able to feel it and witness the changes of these dark energies and powers trying to push that and try to stop that ascension. It's not going to happen. The light's always going to triumph. So if you're coming in this direction of it, notice the changes around you, absorb them, and think of a Rubik's Cube of ways to protect yourself, but don't get caught in that hopelessness, because, the vibration that you were talking about there, Outcast, was that vibration that you're putting out, that if you're hopeless and you're fear and there's nothing left to lose, or there's nothing left in life and there's really nothing left to lose. And like that vibration that you're putting out, that is the lowest human vibration that there is. Like something's feeding off of that. And if you can pull yourself out of that and see, that's the way that everything being directed right now, the narratives, the news, the programming, the daily workings, the elite organizations, the international organizations, the militaries, they're all pushing you toward that downtrodden vibration by allowing you to manifest it and let it all roll in your brain. Well, just go outside and put your fingers in this and you quickly stop worrying about the world. But please don't, and stay with us on the planet here. We need your help. However bad it gets, there's always going to be people to help you out, and we need you right now. So everybody is so needed, because every one of us that becomes more awake is then the army to fight back against this. We need everybody we can. So if you think, it's so hopeless, just change the frame on it. I need you right now to come with us to change this world into a better place. You have a place here, and just relish that chance that we all have to, looking back in 2,000 years from this time, they'll be talking about us as to how we push these dark powers back for, another 12,000 years around the cycle of birth here in our solar system again.
Well, those are really sage, smart words. a silver lining, if you will. I love hearing that. And that's all what I always want to ask from our guests is, after we've talked about this in great deal like this, silver linings are the best to the best way to think about this and actually have people go out and do exactly what you said. Start doing the things that our forefathers did, that our family did years ago. Those microgreens sitting next to you, that my grandma and grandpa had a farm, an orchard. They had animals, they had everything. And they went through the Great Depression. They knew how to be self-sufficient and survive. They didn't need any outside, very little outside resources. They had it all at home. And I think, David, I love the way you're living right there with your acreage and everything that you're putting together and those greens. Man, I love those greens. Important for the birds too. Our chickens love that stuff.
Yeah, I'll give the roots to the chickens because I put it in a soil medium that I get out of the forest. I have a bunch of like humus and ground up leaves and all kind of stuff as the bed for this. But after we trim all these off, you got that nice roots in there. Just throw them out to the chickens. They'll scratch through and get everything. Yeah.
Outcast, any last words
Outcast, hey, I know you're going to say something in my own words back to me. I want to hear it, man. What do you think about humanity? We need every single person. We need every person.
I'm really inspired. First of all, I think that when I'm read people and talking to them, I'm so passionate and I'm talking on a level that's a little bit elevated from them and they have to kind of keep up with me. Well, you made me feel like that tonight. I'm trying to comprehend and keep up with you. I love it. Thank you for expanding my mind. I'm really grateful for the concept of, I'm going to personalize it and use it and say, we need you. There's a lot of hope in that. And that's something that's missing when I'm doing my version of my red pill that I do. I love that. I think it's really important. It gives hope. It helps people understand that they have a part in this. You're really inspiring, David. And I wanted to say, I hope that we were adequately entertaining for you enough to come back sometime.
Oh, absolutely. And I saw up on the chat board there. Yeah. You can find more of my content up at the Adapt 2030 channel. That's Adapt. Like we need to adapt our food growing strategies before 2030 for all of us to survive through this.
Yeah.
Adapt 2030. And then I got the mini Ice Age Conversations podcast and my radio programs, 10 p.m. to midnight on Revolution Radio every Thursday night, Studio A, where I have a co-host too. The one, I was talking about, credit to him for the magnetic birthings and figuring out the war cycle inside the low magnetic field cycle of births to extend lifetimes. So those are kind of the three places where I'm at. And I do have that opportunity report that I do as a monthly, report on agriculture and possibilities to hedge. If anybody hedges out there, you're going to need the report because I go into that. I try to dissect areas on the planet, which crops, which time of the year, which losses will be incurred, and if you're buying or you're getting export from that or delivery supply from certain areas, you're going to have to switch that. So you can already front run that and be out ahead. Or you're going to have barley losses over here in South America, specifically Buenos Aires region over in Argentina. Okay, if that's my main supplier, then you already know that. Then you can go off and start to look for extra supply to try to get your quota and front run that. It's going to be a couple months till it hits. But if you're already out there, 2 months, I've got 2 months to figure this one out instead of, hey, where's our shipment? They were out. They were really low this year because of extra UVB radiation from the ozone hole increases. Like that's a no-brainer to pick that one out. You just have to do the research on it. But anyway, I'm rambling now. Thanks for having me on.
Well, David, that's been great. Thank you. And I'm going to put all your links that you sent me earlier on there. I'll leave that report off of there until now or until later. And hopefully we'll get you back again. This has been great. I'm sure you're going to blow a lot of our audience minds. They're going to really enjoy this. And you're right in line with the type of show that we do. Self-reliance is key in all this. The knowledge, you can't get any higher knowledge than these things you brought tonight. So I really appreciate you, David.
Thank you for having me on. Yeah, I'll get you on my show too, and we'll have a roundabout. Outcast, you're welcome. Come on, we'll get a big roundabout, a big round table going here with a few people I know too. It'd be an epic capital E broadcast that could go for 3-4 hours.
I'd be honored.
Yeah, I love it. Yep, we'll have to make that happen. So yeah, I appreciate that, David. It's been great. We'll talk to you soon.